Am I the a-hole for demanding my boyfriend drop his hobbies? Story. I, 23F, have been with my boyfriend, 28M, for about 2 years. He has played rugby for the entirety of our relationship and started about a year before we met. Rugby is the third person in our relationship, so I asked him to stop playing. Was I wrong? Every Saturday is rugby day, where he wakes up, watches a game, plays a game with his team, and then watches another game after, usually followed up by highlight reels on YouTube until he goes to bed. He has a 2-hour practice every Tuesday and Thursday. He coaches a high school team. He's assistant coach to a college team. After every game, practice, scrimmage, etc., he comes home with some sort of injury or is just in general debilitated by pain, covered in bruises and cuts. He has been to the hospital for a separated shoulder, a split open eyebrow, a split open lip that went all the way through his muscle and fat, and the most recent was he got a bunch of turf beads in his eyelid and was almost blinded by it, not exaggerating. He will take off work for games and practices. He will cancel dates for games and practices. He will miss important events for games and practices. My family home caught on fire, so we had a fundraiser. He tried to skip it for a game. The game got canceled, so that's why he showed up. We were out for my birthday dinner, and he asked if we could rush it so that he could make his practice after. We can't go out and do anything on a rugby day. We can't have private time on a rugby day. He can't function on a rugby day. And his excuse is, it's tough on rugby days. Well, his Saturday as a rugby day has turned into every day is a rugby day. He gets stressed out financially because where we live is extremely expensive, but he has money for new cleats, new studs for his cleats when they break off, tape for his joints for games, team memorabilia. Basically, he has money for rugby like an addict has money for his fix. I want to say, I'm glad he has something he enjoys. I'm glad he coaches and that his students look up to him, and that it makes him feel good about himself. We've both met some incredible people through the rugby community, but the phone calls at 1 a.m. that he's in the hospital due to an injury, getting yelled at because he's broke, having to cater to him whenever he plays because he's sore, consoling him when he's bawling his eyes out because he lost a starting position and having to eat, sleep, and breathe rugby because he does. It was too much. He freaked when I asked him to leave. Told me I don't appreciate the things he cares about, said I should be thankful he has rugby or else he would be dead, that he has nothing else. I feel horrible. Am I the a-hole? Response 1. NTA. And this is as a former college football player who then played rugby at a pretty high level for years after college, before retiring from active participation to prioritize my career, relationship, and starting a family. What you described is a not uncommon example of rugby culture. Rugby is a great game and community, and it can be addictive. It gives men a positive masculine outlet and bonding that is rare in our society today. However, you're not the a-hole for asking someone who is years into a relationship to prioritize the relationship over their hobbies. It's part of life, and it's his choice to make. Of course, the flip side of that is he is not the a-hole if he chooses rugby over you. Y'all are both adults who need to have an honest conversation with yourselves and each other about your relationship and where it is going. The only way anyone is an a-hole here is if y'all lead each other on and are not honest about your needs and life plans moving forward. Edit 1. Never had one of my comments blow up like this. It's pretty cool. Haha. Point 2. Just to acknowledge what others have pointed out with regard to the boyfriend's behavior. I agree that he could definitely adjust his perspective. Planning to skip the fundraiser is eyebrow-raising to say the very least, as is yelling at OP over his financial problems. Reply 1. Whoa, whoa, whoa. A solid take on relationships, communication, and if needs/plans aren't aligned, you should end relationship not because someone is necessarily bad or wrong, but because you simply aren't on the same page. Are these reasonable, mature takes allowed on the platform? I'm wondering if I need to report this to a mod or something. Reply 2, yeah, this is bull crap. We came here for carnage, not maturity and sanity. But on the real, I'm so glad that was the first comment I read. I get so tired of the indignation, outrage, use of the same therapy speak/labels I see everywhere, and red flag emojis. Reply 3, I for one am totally overseeing the comments packed with break up now, you're in danger, and this is fake, let's interrogate OP over minutia. The former takes away from truly, clearly dangerous situations, while the latter is totally unnecessary and boring. I saw a post the other day in which people kept grilling OP for what kind of gaming console they had because their timeline didn't line up, in a post about SA. Reply 4, the guy is wrecking his life, being a crap partner, yelling at his partner, ruining his finances, and exhibiting every aspect of an addict, but somehow he's not necessarily bad or wrong. That's such a completely absurd take. Yes, he's absolutely wrong and he's sabotaging his life. Reply 5, it's his life to sabotage. He's not right or wrong for what he's doing, but if it's wrong for her, like it would be wrong for me, then she should leave. Response 2, what's the question behind the question? I think it's really, should I stay in this relationship? I think the answer is no. For me, this would be a deal breaker. His partner will always come second to rugby. It seems like he has it all backwards. He's in a serious relationship with rugby while you're just a hobby. Adding my judgment, not the a-hole. Reply 1. This is it exactly. OP is taking the backseat to his real love. O.P, you're not the a-hole for asking, but his reaction to that ask tells you everything you really need to know. Now you just have to believe him and decide if you want to stick around for more of the same. Update Amy. Reply 2, yes. It seems to me that he is not in a place in his life where he is ready to prioritize anything over rugby. And instead of trying to change that, she just needs to leave, because if she gets him to change it, he is only going to resent her deeply, horribly. What we have are two people with incompatible lifestyles and priorities. I mean, frankly, if you care about your partner so little that you won't go to a fundraiser when their house burns down, then you probably shouldn't be in a serious relationship with anybody, because you just don't have it in you to prioritize anything over your own choices and desires, even when something very serious has happened. But right or wrong, that's where he is in life, and he has made it very clear. Trying to get him to stop seems like a fool's errand. Reply 3, yeah, OP, this is the real answer. There's no AH issue. You need to respect yourself and think about leaving. Reply 4, I agree. You have to ask yourself if you want to have kids with him, because you have to sacrifice being always second, and if that's worth a family. Will he change when you get kids? Will he stay home with the kids alone instead of leaving to play sports? This is the question you need to ask yourself. Honestly, I think we know the answer to be no. He will always choose rugby over you and the kids, or worst, he will force rugby on the kids. And now you have rugby 24/7 with kids practices. I say end it now until he proves he can manage both a relationship, family, and rugby. Because if you force him to pick you over sport, he will hate you for it, because it will change who he is, and then you won't even recognize him anymore. So you have to live with rugby to some capacity with him. Reply 5. It's almost like people in or about to embark on long-term relationships should discuss lifestyles and future expectations. Response 3. What I'm reading is that he's deeply and truly passionate about rugby. I don't know how to rule on this exactly. On the one hand, if you're asking and not demanding, there's merit to that. On the other, it's obviously important to him. Similarly, if you're concerned with his well-being, and I fully get that, and in the same breath, you also sound like you're a bit jealous that rugby is so important to him. I love animals. I've worked with some potentially dangerous dogs. Think rescued fighting dogs. I've never been hurt, but it's not impossible. If someone asked me to give it up, I'd be absolutely crushed and honestly, probably more keen to give them up than my passion. Reply 1, it's not so much jealousy, just that he will straight up neglect the relationship, not just with me, but everyone else important to him for the sport. And then these people come to me questioning why he won't show up for them. He puts his health and employment at risk for the sport constantly. I've ridden horses my entire life. I love horses. I love the atmosphere of the barn. He never came to the barn or helped me out, never offered to come to shows, and when I asked, he would say no. But I'm expected to be at his games for both his team and the teams he coaches. Come along to team drink-ups and fundraisers, etc. It's more so a double standard. Reply 2, okay, so your hobbies don't matter to him, but his absolutely have to matter to you. I feel your frustration, and I agree. It sounds like it dominates his life rather than just enriches it. And it sounds like it casts a shadow on your life too. If you can't find a middle ground, or if his obsession is starting to negatively affect your mental health, like worrying and losing sleep or feeling like the second choice behind a sport, he may not be your soulmate. That's not what you want to hear, and I'm sorry. I would just hate to hear that you're suffering for his obsession, or that he's suffering for giving up such an important piece of his life. I don't think you're an a-hole, though. I wish you both the best, however you decide to proceed. Reply 3. It sounds like it dominates his life rather than just enriches it. This is major key. While it's great he has a hobby, an outlet he is passionate about, he needs to approach his life outside of rugby with some enthusiasm and recognize how neglectful he is being in his relationship. Reply 4. Just leave. You are not compatible. It's great that he has a passion project, but what do you get out of it? And if his hobbies are taking all the emotional, financial, and physical resources out of this relationship, it's not fair to you, and you should probably cut your loss now rather than later. Reply 5. Just leave. You are not compatible. This isn't a compatibility issue. It's a her boyfriend has an addiction problem. Response 4. I was prepared for you to be an AH, but this is 100% not the a-hole. He doesn't have a sense of balance between you and the sporting community, and his priorities are out of whack. Not to mention, he doesn't sound like a safe player. I have played very high-level rugby since I was 11. Injuries do happen, including weird rogue ones. But to be on a constant rotation of high-level injury means that he doesn't know how to properly make or take tackles and is playing like a man on a mission to get hurt. Those people are scary, and those people are ones that shouldn't be on the pitch. Reply 1. If you read the timeline, he started when he was already in his 20s. Makes bad technique and injuries more likely. Reply 2. I did read the timeline, and yeah, some bad technique can definitely happen, and as we age, we're more prone to injury, but these injuries sound extreme and frequent, which means O.P.S boyfriend is likely playing with some intent to do a poor job. I actually shudder for the younger ones he coaches because this is beyond the pale. Reply 3. The constant and alarming rate of serious injury, combined with his obsession and his statement that he'd be dead without rugby, is a very concerning picture put together. Also, there's no way he's an effective coach with this attitude, and I'd guarantee it's not just himself he's endangering on the pitch when he plays. Reply 4. I'm shocked he hadn't been booted from a team yet, because I know that at any of my clubs, he would be considered a liability. Reply 5. I haven't played myself aside from some casual pickup matches, but my sister and brother-in-law have both played club rugby in a rugby-mad country, and yeah, agreed, he's not safe as a teammate or opponent. Response 5. Said I should be thankful he has rugby, or else he would be dead. That is an extremely concerning statement. What does he mean by that? Getting yelled at because he's broke. This is also very, very bad. I'm concerned that he's addicted to this for some reason, or masking some deep mental health issues with it. It's great to be passionate about something, but to say he would die without it, that's not healthy. Screaming at you because he's broke is abusive. Not the a-hole for asking him to stop, but he's not going to stop. He puts rugby above literally everything else in his life, including his job and you. You cannot build a healthy relationship with someone like that. He needs mental health help, and you need to leave him if he won't. Reply 1. He's already chosen rugby over her and himself multiple times. He isn't going to choose her this time either. I don't know, girl, doesn't seem like a healthy dynamic. He's yelling at you, doesn't care enough about you to show up in emergencies. Rugby doesn't control him, he can choose his actions. And he's choosing not to care about his health, your health, etc. He doesn't seem to care about you. Reply 2. This is the reply that absolutely aligns with my take. Yelling at OP because she's broke is not okay in a relationship, and it sounds like rugby really has become his whole being. Maybe rugby saved him from a very bad headspace, but if that's the case, rugby alone can't fix it. He needs to talk with a therapist or psychiatrist. I think OP should bow out because she's just his aid and service to rugby at this point, not the a-hole. Reply 3. Yes, thank you. This man needs a lot of help that OP can't give him. He manages his wants and needs poorly and emotionally abuses OP. He doesn't have nothing else. He has OP and family. The fact he doesn't acknowledge tells me all I need to know. Playing a sport is great, but as an adult, we learn that self-preservation is also important, and sometimes insurance and employment dictate how much crazy crap we can take on. Not so much for O.P.S partner. You all aren't living in the same reality. If this were my life, I'd say it's time to walk away. Response 6. The comments here are wild. They're so boo-hoo evil woman stop man from having fun. It's pathetic. People are totally ignoring the fact that he's screaming you down for things that are his own fault. skipping work and siphoning funds despite money being tight, and intentionally neglecting family obligations in favor of his hobby. He shouldn't be screaming at you at all. He shouldn't be ditching you on your birthday or ignoring your family in crisis. Whether he likes your family or not, if he cared for you, he would show up. He sounds like a terrible partner. He sounds manipulative, dismissive, and guilt-trippy. Rugby isn't the source of the problem. It's his attitude towards you. If he only loves rugby, then you should leave him and rugby to it, not the a-hole. Reply 1. Yes, this. If he had simply been spending too much time on rugby, it would have been a no a-holes here issue. But trying to ditch his girlfriend on special occasions / tough situations, yelling at her for problems he caused, expecting her to support his hobby while he doesn't bother to support hers, that has very little to do with loving rugby, and way more to do with being a selfish, immature a-hole. Reply 2. I agree with this, though I disagree that her asking him to quit rugby is the solution. I think this is the person he is, and rugby is just a manifestation of this. I'm all for him playing rugby if he likes rugby, but rugby didn't make him scream at her, rugby didn't make him financially irresponsible, rugby didn't make him abandon her when she needed support, rugby didn't make him ignore her birthday. He did all that because he chose to, rugby or not, and I sincerely doubt that him quitting his hobby will change his behavior. Response 7. The blunt truth is that unless you see a future with this chap long term, then you should end the relationship now. You do not want to be with somebody who resents you for getting in the way of their passion, nor do you want to be worrying all the time about him getting injured. Your use of the word cleats suggests you are American. So let me give you the Brit perspective on rugby and other sports. Many men live for their sport and their team. They will travel hundreds of miles to support their local football, you would call it soccer, team on a freezing February night at an away fixture. Or, if they follow a premiership team, will pay huge amounts of money for a ticket to watch their team play. If you are able to access an app called BBC Sounds, listen to a program called 606. It's a football phone-in show where fans give their views on their teams and has more passion than a hormone-soaked teen. When it comes to supporting somebody significant in their love of the sport, look no further than cricket at junior/school, village level. In the summer, mums will be up the night before a match baking, as tea is as important as a match result. And a shot-bought sponge will bring shame upon you, then driving their kids/husbands for hours to a match. Every weekend during the summer. Finally, rugby. You are right to be concerned about injury. Players are getting fitter and heavier, and concussion is a real concern here in the UK, where they now have gum shields that can measure the impact of a tackle. At the professional level, there is a medical team and a recovery regime. At the amateur level, an awareness of the risks, but fewer ice baths. So if you are planning a long-term future with this chap, suggest you explain your concerns. Sport is expensive, time-consuming, and can be dangerous, but sometimes the reward is worth the risk. I hope this works out for you. You sound more worried than anything else. And that's not a good permanent state to be in. Reply 1. I don't think the woman needs an explanation for how sports fandom works, as she's got her own hobby, horses, and she's clearly living with a fan. But this guy's fandom isn't normal. It's not normal to regularly be in the hospital emergency room, even if you're a professional player. Injured? Yes, ER at 1 a.m. No? So I'd be wondering about that. And it sounds like every day if he's not playing, he's coaching or watching. That'd be fine if he were a professional rugby player, perhaps, but he's not. So just like the rest of us, he needs to balance his hobby with the rest of his life. Or he doesn't, but that means he doesn't get to have a girlfriend, unless he can find someone who doesn't care that he's not around much. Reply 2. In my city, Amsterdam, there were massive riots last night from football hooligans. Having a hobby is one thing, but there are fans all over the world who take it too far and beyond what is healthy. Reply 3. It's being reported as riots, except it was directed specifically at Jews. It was a pogrom, not a riot. They weren't football hooligans. They were racists, using football as a guise. Reply 4. Yes, thanks for the explanation. Because sports obsession is a truly alien concept to Americans. Absolutely no possible way we could have understood that without your help. Reply 5. You sound so condescending. She doesn't need a diatribe about what sports are or how insanely passionate people can be. She notes that he's often broke. He ignores or cancels on things she wants to do or is doing. He wanted to cancel on a fundraiser for her burnt house. That is not normal. That's obsessive levels of attachment, and he shouldn't have a girlfriend if he's going to neglect her in favor of being financially and physically unhealthy. Response 8. Info. Did you know how involved rugby was in his life when you started dating? How long has he been playing? Your priorities are not aligned right now. While you're not an ass for asking, you can't be surprised when he declines to quit. Reply 1. When we got together, he played for the singular team, watched a game on the weekend, and played one game on the weekend. That was it. He had played one season before we met. Reply 2. This is sounding more like a r/relationship advice post because it seems like you two really need to sit down and have a serious conversation about your priorities in life when it comes to the relationship. Trying to change him by asking him to quit something that seems to be a growing passion is only going to create resentment and lead to the relationship falling apart. Reply 3. What relationship? She thinks she's in a relationship with him, but he isn't even aware of her existence. He's in a relationship with rugby. His priorities are first. Rugby, second. More rugby, third. His rugby teammates and various teams. Fourth, injuring himself and wallowing in the pain. Fifth, finding ways to not go to work so he can play more rugby. And sixth, getting money from her so he cannot go to work and still play rugby. She is nowhere on that list. Reply 4. OOP people change, and sometimes you're just not compatible anymore. Don't think about all the time you've invested in this relationship. It sounds like it's run its course and it's time to move on. I've been there. For me, it was boyfriend with multiple hobbies I didn't share: hunting, golf, and snowmobiling. So all his weekends were already spoken for with his buddies. I moved on and met my now husband, someone who shares my interests. I don't need to beg him to spend time with me and our kids. Response 9. Going against the grain here, but I'd say ditch the boyfriend. Point 1. He's not passionate about rugby, he's obsessed with it. That's not going to change. Point 2. He's not passionate about you. Rugby is interfering with your sex life, and he opted for a rugby match rather than support your family after their house burned down. You are not a priority for him. Point 3. He doesn't treat you well. He yells at you, dismisses your concerns, and uses manipulation and guilt trips. That is not healthy. The problem isn't rugby, it's him. Not the a-hole for asking for what you need, but now that he's shown that he doesn't care about your needs and is unwilling to compromise, it's time to mirror his actions, put yourself first, and find a better partner. Response 10, NTA. But remember, you can leave a dating situation for any reason. I think lack of quality daily couples time, honestly, you're living off crumbs and can't count on him, and sex on his timeline only. Is he sore/distracted? Hell, even is he home? This is leaving out the money woes, not for him to cover you on everything, but just listening to him whine about low funds. Response 11. Nah, you're simply incompatible. You asking didn't hurt anyone, even if asking for a compromise may have been a better look. But obviously this is his passion, so you're no more an age for asking him to stop than you would be if you asked him to grow an extra arm. Sorry, this is his passion. It's okay to love him, but not love life with him. You deserve to find someone more compatible, and he deserves to keep following his passion. Reply 1. She asked for a compromise. She wants him to quit playing so he stops hurting so much and also stops yelling at her because he's broke. But she's not telling him not to watch rugby or coach it. He's the one who doesn't want to compromise. He wants her to stick around. Put up with him screaming at her because he's broke after spending a lot of money on rugby stuff. Tolerate predictable 1 a.m. calls from the hospital when he's hurt. Cater to him on practice and game days because he's too sore to care for himself or, God forbid, care for her. This is on him. If he loves rugby, great, but he shouldn't expect her to stick around for what sounds like real punishment just because he loves rugby. Reply 2. He is absolutely an AH, trying to rush her birthday dinner, prioritizing a game over a fundraiser for her burnt house, and yelling at her for him being broke while he spends all his money on his hobby is AH behavior. In another comment, OP also says he shows no interest in her hobbies while he expects her to have an interest in his. Loving rugby and living/breathing it is not being an AH, but not being there for your girlfriend on special days / in challenging times. Dumping your frustration at situations you caused on her, and having double standards is being an AH. Response 12. Said I should be thankful he has rugby or else he would be dead, that he has nothing else. Damn, that's That's sad, not the a-hole. You are the third wheel in his relationship with rugby. I get that was his life before you came along, but the fact that he still prioritizes rugby to that extent is telling. You don't even come in second place in his life. Thinking you might want to cut your losses at this point and move on. I'm really sorry. Reply 1. The saddest part is that she's clarified in a comment. When they got together, he was only playing 1 game a week. Presumably with a practice night or 2, he's escalated from having a hobby is great to full-ass addiction over the course of their relationship, or I doubt he would have had time to get together with her at all. Response 13. I don't think you're an a-hole for wanting him to stop bailing on you and constantly injuring himself for his game, but even putting aside how much money he spends on his game, the moment he started verbally abusing you over money should have been the end of it. He's told you who he is. You should listen and find someone better. Reply 1. He literally told her that without rugby, he has nothing else. OP isn't even a thought in this man's mind. Response 14. Please reconsider this relationship. You need someone in your life who would make you a priority for once. It's nice that he has a game he's passionate about, but making it his entire personality would become very difficult for someone to deal with if they're not as passionate about it as him. From the sounds of it, you're the third wheel in this relationship. Prioritize yourself, and I hope you find someone who learns to balance their hobbies and their relationships equally, not the a-hole. Response 15. For me, it was basketball. Loved it, but it beat me up. I eventually gave it up in my early 30s because the cost of being injured everyone. 2 months was too great, too hard to get around work, too much lost time in treatment and rehab. My friends who played rugby were worse off. They might as well have joined Fight Club, which was one of my running gags when they showed up with bruises and the occasional broken nose. I think your concern over the cost, both physical and financial, is justified, and it sounds like something that has crossed over to obsession in the sense that he is prioritizing the sport over his basic life events. So not the a-hole, but you do have to ask yourself if this is so core to his enjoyment of life that it's part of who he is. If that's the case, then it's like being with a 35-year-old lifetime smoker. It's not something they occasionally do that annoys you. It's literally who they are. Typically, this situation arises with people who have unrealistic employment goals, for example, actors. You want to be able to tell them to grow up and get a real job, but the reality is often that this is so central to their conception of self that you're telling them to shed their skin. In which case, it raises the question of relationship compatibility. Sorry. Response 16. NTA. But be aware that he's not going to change. If you want him and less rugby, you're going to be disappointed forever. Either accept his level of rugby games and everything that goes with it, or move on. Response 17. NTA. Doesn't sound like you approached it well, but you're within your rights to tell him it's started to impact your relationship in a negative way, and he has to make some choices. But be prepared that might not include you. Response 18. Yenta. I disagree with most of these comments. He's replacing doing real work and healing on himself with an addiction. If it's affecting all aspects of his life negatively, it's an issue. I don't think you should tell him to go cold turkey and stop, but you should talk to him about how this affects you and what you've seen it do to his life, and see if you guys can agree on less rugby. It's not okay that he neglects you and his job for this. Response 19 was leaning to, you're the a-hole based on title, but I think it's a pretty clear not the a-hole if what you're describing is accurate. One question, why are you still with this guy? He doesn't prioritize you or the relationship, not to mention all the little ways he makes you feel invisible. There's no benefit to staying with him because you two are not compatible. I think it was wrong to ask him to leave the sport, and you should have done yourself a favor and left instead. Response 20. Hey guys, do you know that you can be extremely passionate about something and still be a nice and caring partner? It's about balance. This guy is a complete a-hole, ignoring his relationships and putting rugby always first. Sometimes